strategic market planning workshop. You can register for that online. The links to that are on the town website. That's going to be Monday evening and then Tuesday morning. And our Martin Luther King Jr. celebration that was delayed due to snow in January is going to be combined with the Black History Month celebration on February 26th at Colonial Beach Baptist Church.
Great, thank you. I just went over to CD Games with Tommy for like a date night to play arcade games. Anyway, I really recommend it. I can't wait. They're opening an expansion in the back. That's a 1950s style milkshake bar. So it's exciting. Mr. Moncure and I met with the rescue squad and have helped them find some resources for the new facility. I know they're fundraising already. I've seen some events for that. Again, parking meeting, board of supervisors meeting. We went to Richmond to visit Sands Anderson and also to promote the legislative agenda that we have in Richmond right now. I'm sure our town manager will give an update on those items. There was a signage meeting, and I met with Marianne Day of the Chamber about the business license updates in this. So it's a little bit of what else is going on. And I'm looking forward to the MLK, or it's not MLK Day now, it's Black History Month event. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm very excited about participating in it.
We do have an agenda in addition to Burkett, Lyburn, and Altogether Gospel Singers. Jade McGinnis is going to perform for us.
Oh, fantastic. If you haven't heard Jade, she came and sang the national anthem for us a year ago. Phenomenal. All right, that's up for my council announcements. Town manager update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Indy Adams Jacobs, Town Manager. Couple updates as it relates to a few things in town before we get to our 2021 accomplishments and town council priorities updates. First, as it relates to the Dominion power outage, just wanted to give an update. Many of you have probably seen the social media post as well as the information that was on our website as well as the code red. But we've been working with Dominion to kind of identify what that issue was. There was an issue with their pump, one of their substations, which caused the townwide power outage. Dominion reached out to our public works staff and worked in collaboration with our public works director, our deputy director, and our operations manager to identify what some of those issues were that caused the root cause of that problem and work to restore power to their customers as quickly as possible. In coordination with Dominion, the town actually closed our offices because we are a big power user as well as over at our wastewater treatment plant. So we did close at 11 that day to work in accordance with them. By 2 p.m. that day, power had been restored to most of the 2,800 customers in town. There were still some residents who had some reported outages, non-related, but reported outages nonetheless on Marshall Avenue, and they worked to resolve those issues as well. So we're always in constant collaboration and communication with our partners, just like Dominion Power, and we'll continue to work with them to identify some of the root causes of those issues. But anytime that we have those issues, we're committed to communicating that effectively to the public and keeping everyone in the know. Second, as the mayor alluded to, we were in Richmond at the General Assembly last week. I testified to our charter amendment bill, which is HB 164, that passed the subcommittee of towns, cities, and counties. And now that will go, that is actually passed through the House. And now we're at the stage of the General Assembly, which Councilmember Moncure is very familiar with at crossover. So things will go over to the Senate side. And Senator Stewart expects to speak to that bill on behalf of the town. At this point, I will start on our 2021 accomplishments. There were quite a lot, so we kind of pulled out some of the highlights for various departments. There will be a spot on our new website that will have this dedicated information as it relates to our accomplishments, as well as our strategic plan and our work plan and initiatives, as well as the comp plan initiatives moving forward. So starting off with our finance department, very excited to report that obviously our finance department completed our 2021 audit ahead of our state deadline by about a month and a half. We actually beat the county by 2 months, not that we're in competition. We also completed our general obligation bond refinancing with the help of our Davenport financiers who are here, as well as our financial advisors, saving our town residents over $265,000 over the course of loans. Finance department also has normal day-to-day operations as it relates to business licenses and just things that they do internally for our town operations. One of the highlights is they issued 253 business licenses in FY21. So many thanks to our CFO and our great finance team for all the work that they do, and also have picked up kind of the ball on customer service as well. Moving on to Public Works. As Councilmember Williams just alluded to, we've implemented our City Works asset management software. We will have an outward-facing public piece of that software coming with our new website, where you'll be able to go in and submit work orders. There's currently a work order form, but the new system will have the ability to tell you when your anticipated work order will be completed and more improved communication with our staff on that. Second, we repainted the water towers, both at the wastewater treatment plant as well as in town. And we completed Castlewood bathroom renovations. And we've also been working very hard on everything infrastructure related. So we contracted with professional services for Dewberry to replace our central drainage area sewer replacement, which is the biggest project that we have coming down the pipeline next year, where we'll be leveraging our $1.4 million in ARPA funds specifically for that project. So thank you to our Public Works crew, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Chris Rutsky, and Mr. David Knapp for all of their great leadership. Next, moving on to HR, a department that we don't see a lot of because they're internal facing, but Ms. Laura Corbin, who is retiring, unfortunately for us, fortunate for her, has done a lot of great work on creating and revising personnel policies, getting people caught up on their evaluations. We completed a salary survey for our Colonial Beach Police Department. Ms. Corbin also spearheaded our summer internship program, hired and onboarded 30 employees, and she coordinated with our local rescue squad for CPR training for all of our staff. So up there, you'll see a picture of us actually taking part in CPR training for adults and infants and babies last summer as well. So we thank Laura for all of her great work. Town clerk. Got to thank Heather, our town clerk, Ms. Oliver, for securing new record management location for all of our records that were at our old jail and old town hall. She's done a great job of pulling together thousands of documents into a new location. And she also spearheaded our summer internship program. And you can see a picture of some of our interns there, along with the mayor this summer. They helped us tremendously over the course of 6 weeks. So very appreciative for those efforts as well. Next, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Duke. Our Parks and Recreation was very, very active last summer. We hosted a skateboard clinic at the schools in collaboration with the Colonial Beach Public Schools. We acquired and opened a mini golf course at Washington Avenue Park. So thanks to our generous donation from the folks who donated the free mini golf course that is free to everyone. And I think there's also a plaque there dedicated to Mr. Kern for all of his efforts in supporting our parks. And then we installed a new hot air balloon for Waterfest, which is a great way to help market our town with that initiative. So we thank Mr. Duke for his work as well. Next, our police department. We partnered with our police department for our annual National Night Out, which was a great success at Torrey Smith Park. So thanks to everyone who came out for that event. As well as supporting our police department. There was also Operation Christmas Cheer and a polar plunge. So thanks to the officers who participated in that as well. Moving on to the town manager's office. In our office, we work intercollaboratively along with our partners in the region. We established the town's first strategic work plan, established the first legislative agenda, revised our emergency operations plan, enhanced community partnerships and regional collaboration, partnered with our local partners like Downtown Colonial Beach on beautification projects, partnered with Northern Neck managers in our region through Montrose, Tappahannock, and Warsaw on marketing efforts, along with Westmoreland County and King George County working on some economic development efforts. And we also hired a grant writer and coordinator to support our town. There you'll see some of the pictures from our beautification project along Colonial Avenue, cleanup from our storm in October with our partners through Comrail and at Dahlgren as well at the top, and then our annual staff retreat at the bottom. And then finally, town council. Our town council has been very active over the last year, working through regional partnerships, both at Comrel, working with the state of Maryland representatives in Charles County to help along with some of the riverboats initiatives on the Maryland side with their legislative initiatives, multiple groundbreakings as it relates to dots and development, mini golf, Castlewood, to name a few. And council also established their first strategic planning retreat held last July to lay that really lays the framework for multi-year success and integration with all of the town's plans and operations. So very thankful and grateful for everything that we were able to accomplish in 2021 and look forward to everything in 2022. And I'll answer any questions that you may have.
This is a pared down list, and that already took a while, but we have a lot to be proud of from last year. Are there any questions? All right, next, the proclamation you've all been waiting for. I know that's why you're here. I can't tell if you're smiling with the mask on or not. It's really hard to tell. Okay. 130 years, guys. Colonial Beach, 130 years. We're older than Dahlgren. I like to tell them that, remind them. We were here first. Whereas Colonial Beach found its popularity as a bathing and fishing resort, also known as the playground on the Potomac, in the 19th century, and whereas on February 25th, 1892, the General Assembly of Virginia incorporated the town of Colonial Beach, and whereas the town then became a separate municipality and governing body, and whereas on March 28th, 1982, Mayor Schwartz, Councilmember Brady, Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Watson, and Councilmember Brayton held the first council meeting. And whereas the upcoming date of February 25th, 2022 will commemorate the 130th year anniversary of the town of Colonial Beach's incorporation. And whereas the Colonial Beach Town Council hereby make a public proclamation expressing their pride, commitment, and dedication to our town and our founding principles in remembering this very notable date in our history. Therefore, be it resolved that the Town Council urge all citizens and visitors of the town of Colonial Beach to take a moment to reflect and acknowledge the historical importance of February 25th as the date commemorating and celebrating the incorporation of our town. 130 years. It's our birthday. Maybe next year we'll throw a birthday party. Okay. All right. Next up is Mr. Trivett, our district supervisor.
Madam Mayor, town council members, I can't help but think that if Walter had been here tonight, he'd have had another history lesson for you about that, even though I'm pretty sure he wasn't around 130 years ago, but he might have been. It's an exciting time to be a member in this town and a resident in this town and a friend to so many people. I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Mitchell. I'm really excited about him being here as the new superintendent of schools. I look forward to meeting with Chief Deaver. I see where he's come from, and I know that he's going to be an attribute to this town. And that's exciting, as well as the many accomplishments this past year. I couldn't help but think when you were reading that, there's a corporal here, a police corporal here from Hampton. And how many of us remember people telling us about making the wrong turn and winding up in Colonial Beach and never leaving? It happens all the time. Now, I'm pretty sure he didn't make the wrong turn. He probably meant to be here, but he's all the way here from Hampton, and I'm sure it's to support our new police chief. So I might be wrong about that, but anyway, it's some good things going on around here, and I'm glad that I'm a part of it. This past week, believe it or not, down the county in Kinsale, they're going to get a dollar store. And the reason I'm telling you about that is because it's a new concept. And we may even see it come here, where they actually are combining the dollar store with a Dollar Tree. And they're both going to be on the same property and in the same building, but so many square feet will be dedicated to Dollar Tree. And if you're familiar with both of those locations, now you'll get dollar stuff and you'll get whatever they sell the stuff for at the dollar store. So we might see that come here in the near future. The board voted on Monday to accept proposal A, which was provided to us from the redistricting committee. They had two proposals, A and B. Had we chose B, it would have relocated 1,956 people into a different precinct, a different voting area. Option A is only relocating 142. So that's a good thing. And I think the mayor and I both learned something new on Monday night, that Monroe Point is actually in District 4. And, you know, we didn't know that. And even though it's in District 4, the people in District 4 have been voting in District 5. So I can tell you down the county today, they're in an uproar about finding out how to fix that. And Dr. Sullivan and I talked about that today, and contacted the registrar's office to see. And we wanted to do that, or I wanted to do that, to ensure that we wasn't sending something that we voted on down to the state legislature, and then it had to come back to us and something was wrong. So, but it looks like that's not going to affect what we did. There will be a public hearing on the redistricting, and that'll be in the near future because an ordinance will have to be adopted for that. This past week, we also learned that the county has issued 220 more building permits this year than they have in the previous year. I mean, it's just unbelievable. They issued 1,030 this past year, and the town knows because they probably issued just as many, it seems like. And they also passed this past week over 1 million sewer taps. So it's just unbelievable that our county's growing. I think the county administrator said there's like 3,000 second homes here, which is 7th or 8th in the state. So we're growing, and we know from the usage of some of these utilities that a lot of those people, because of COVID, are actually living here now because they can telework, and this is their first home instead of their second home. So that's a good thing, I think. I wanted to let you know that the new high school, the substantial completion date for Washington Westmoreland County High School will be March the 23rd. There's going to be invitations, or it'll be on our website or the school board's website to let you know when you can come down and visit that facility and make appointments, and they're proud of it without a doubt. And they're going to be excited for anybody in Westmoreland County to come down there and tour that facility. And we currently have students that live in the town that go to WNL. And so I expect that we'll have students continue to go down there when the new high school opens. I think I saw somewhere about DMV, the vehicle coming here. If I remember correctly, it's also going to be in Montrose. So they're getting back out around. I remember when they were in Dahlgren, every month. So that's good because you still have to have an appointment. If you go the one up on Route 3, you still got to make an appointment to go in there and get anything done. So they're going to be in Montrose on March the 10th and April the 25th and May the 26th. And I think you can probably go to the county website and get that information as well. See if there's anything else I wanted to tell you about that I took some notes on. I don't think so. Anybody have any questions? I will tell you the Social Services Board, who has had one member for many weeks now, Susan Mack, and she's probably thinking it's not even going to be a board, but actually the board did vote for 3 other members of that board, and we're still waiting for the 4th district to provide that one last one. And like I've told you in the past, I'm so glad that she's going to be on that board because it's in her profession, and she'll be able to be a big asset to that. So if there's nothing that anybody has any questions about, good seeing you as always. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to invite Woody to the next meeting too with his
Yeah,
District
good
4
luck
coming in here. Just- Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Madam Mayor, Town Council, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to share a few words. Those in the audience, I know I met some of you. I'm hoping to meet more of you. So thank you for being present. I'm going to spend a little bit of time not giving a report, but just tell a little bit about me, because I know most people are probably saying, who's this guy? Especially with his accent. So let me just get it out of the way. I am originally from the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. I came to this country when I was 14, went through high school, and it probably was the best thing my parents ever did for me, because I am a product of public education all the way. And I say that is the best thing my parents ever did for me because it gave me the opportunity to be able to do something that most kids my age in the Caribbean never get a chance to do, and that is to what we call living this American dream about going to school and getting an education. And so little did I know, I didn't think I was going to be in um, public education, because when I went to college, I studied public policy, spent a year in law school, and I was going to be like one of you sitting at the council, probably running for city council in New York. But I took a substitute teaching job and I fell in love with it. And I've been in it since then, since '98. So that's the background for me from where I'm from. My wife is a middle school principal in Prince William. I have two girls. One goes to Christopher Newport. The other one is a senior, going to decide between UVA, William and Mary, and God knows what else, Virginia Tech.
UVA, but yes.
Yes. So we're going to leave it up to her. With that being said, about my experience, I have 26 years in public education, 21 in Virginia, and the last 16 I've been a principal. I work in two of the largest school divisions in this Commonwealth, Prince William for 10 as a principal, and the last 6 in Fairfax. I am currently, and I want to say it because I want to just make sure you learn a little bit about me. Currently, I am the I guess I don't know how to use the word reigning, but I am the current Virginia Principal of the Year, the National Distinguished Principal for the state of Virginia. Thank you. That's gonna they'll be choosing a new person next month in March, so there'll be a new distinguished principal. And before that, when I was in Prince William, I was the Principal of the Year there and the Washington Post Leadership Award. So that's really kind of like my background. So people ask me why Colonial Beach, why take this job here. You get to the crossroads in your career where you want to make a bigger difference. I tell people I've worked in New York City where I first started, big urban school district. I moved to Prince William in a suburban school district, and now I'm on full circle in a small rural school district. And it's all about kids, and it's all about making a difference. And I heard Mr. Trivette made a comment earlier, and I'm going to disagree with him, about the beautiful high school that was built in Westmoreland, and more of our kids going to school there. We're hoping to keep our kids right here on the beach. I know that we have a lot of work to do, particularly around changing the culture of the school district, particularly around changing board relationship, especially with our council. My goal is to try to find a way on how we can have a collaborative relationship. I had some great discussions with some of you. There'll be a few of you I'll be reaching out to kind of really get together and have some conversations so that you could kind of see what we're working on. But I want to end with this. I introduced my 100-day plan to the school committee on the website, and I've been asking 6 questions, and I'm going to tell you what those questions are because I think it's important, and just so I can collect some data in terms of writing our new strategic plan. And what I ask folks is really what traditions and beliefs do we value at Colonial Beach, specifically our public schools? I also ask folks to tell me about the strengths of the school districts, the challenges, and I ask what we must absolutely keep in our school district. And then I ask for solutions too. And I want to know what some ideas that you may have in terms of improving our school district. And the most important one for me, and if you know anything about me and you've met me, it's all about community relations, family engagement. And that is how are we engaging our families? And what are their struggles? And how do we fix that? So those are the things that I ask, and my goal is to take that data to be able to drive our new strategic plan. So when I meet with you, I'm going to ask you those questions, and I look for honest answers. I get some really good ones. I get some honest ones, and I get some that's like, ooh, I didn't expect that. But it's for me to learn. So I'm looking forward to being here with you each month, just to kind of share what's going on in our district. I will end with this, and that is last night, very proud of our girls basketball team, district champs. So we're very proud of that accomplishment last night. And so thank you again, and I'm looking forward to see you all next month.
That's good, thank you. Mr. Miller, the last opportunity to give us the monthly report.
Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Town Council members, our town manager, she's fantastic, and all of y'all. Thank you so much. Madam Mayor, you have my report, and I have a couple things to add, if you don't mind, please. I'm so proud of the officers working on making our town safe. I'd like to, Dr. Sullivan, thank you so much, ma'am, for being one of the cheerleaders for Officer Nathaniel Thompson. If you come up real quick, Officer Thompson, come on up here. Don't be high. Come on back here, son. Yeah, that's what you ain't supposed to know. You know, community engagement, and when I came here, I talked to you that I love community engagement. I love being a part of the community, and you all have done so much for me. Officer Thompson, we challenged him to be a good community servant, a public servant, and he got with Dr. Sullivan, and he raised $400 by jumping in that freezing water and doing our polar plunge. So the police department has awarded Officer Thompson a certificate of appreciation for doing something that he's supposed to do, being a good community partner, a fantastic public servant, and taking care of our community. So Officer Thompson, on behalf of all the folks that work with you, for setting an example and being a great sport, thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
For those of you that don't know, that fundraiser benefits the Colonial Beach School field trip program. So we raised over $1,000 that day, and $400 was because he had the nerve to do this.
Yeah, nerve.
You gonna do it again, Officer Thompson?
Will I?
Yeah.
So the way this all played out is they came to me and said, if we raise 200, I said, no, please double that and maybe I'll consider it. So they raised 400 in about 7 minutes. So I will do the same thing next year. If it's $800, I'll just do it.
$800 for Officer Thompson to jump in the cold water again.
It has to be that day. You can't start collecting now.
You didn't say that beforehand.
Madam Mayor, if I may, just one other thing to highlight, the great work that the officers are doing. In January, in a 2-week time frame, they seized 3 illegal firearms off the streets of our town. And they did it without incident, and that's the important part. And one of those firearms, the officers diligently went back to last year, and they're going to solve 2 discharging of firearms in our town. And that just speaks to their perseverance, and that they really, really, really want to be a great part of our community. So I'm going to thank the officers for that. Lastly, if I may, Madam Mayor, I just take 1 second of privilege. You all have been fantastic to me. This is and not just you that I'm speaking to. You, all of you have been great to me. And I really thank you for the opportunity. Your town manager, she's wonderful. But to be able to be a part of this town and to embrace me the way you have, that's not by you, like you're putting on. You're doing it passionately and sincerely. So thank you. And I have the privilege now, Madam Mayor, of saying to you, you're going to get a police chief who's way better than me. you're gonna get a police chief that's younger, faster, smarter, and has a lot more going for him than I do. And so, Tom, if you would please, sir. This is important for us. Traditions of policing are somewhat unique at times. And y'all come on up, family. You can't be hiding. I'm not gonna allow that. I can take that before I get out of here. Other staff members, come on up here. You drove from Hampton. Come on up here. You can't sit in the back. What's wrong with y'all?
I don't know.
Yeah, come on up here. What's wrong with y'all? Acting all shy and everything. We have what he's about to do. There's magic to it. There's a really magical part. At the end of what he says, he's going to say some words that are truly magical, that speak to everything. He's going to say, "So help me God." So he's going to put his hand in the Bible. Where's your son? Come on up here. I told you you're going to work. Come on up here. Come on up here. You hold this Bible for your dad. Come on, Dorothy. Come on up here. Y'all both hold it. Ma'am, his wife has to put his badge on. He can't do it himself. Right? It's a new chief thing. Sir, if you would, please.
Ready to take the oath? I do solemnly swear that I will support
I do solemnly swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia,
and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia,
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as Chief of Police for the town of Colonial Beach,
as Chief of Police for the town of Colonial Beach,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Don't you go anywhere.
Madam Mayor, if I may, it's also a tradition to have the new chief. Hold up. Well, he got to put his badge on.
Hold on. We'll let him introduce Mr. Miller before you go.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a gift for you. And it is a gift with some thought to it. And it is not a gift to encourage you to be anywhere else but here in Colonial Beach for the rest of your time. So come back and visit us, okay?
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
giving you a little memento to remember us by, but do not be a stranger. Because you have become absorbed in our community so quickly and so easily. I think we all view you as a neighbor, and I appreciate that about you.
Thank you so much. I'm again humbling and honored. Thank you all so much. And we forgot our Bible, so you have a very resourceful library. I gotta take the Bible back to the library. So thank you, Madam Mayor, again, ma'am, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're gonna earn that, though, right?
Absolutely.
Chief, is your-
So excited to have you here with us.
I don't have anything prepared other than to say I'm truly honored to be standing before all of you. I've met a lot of people today, being in town and turning in my HR packet and preparing for this moment. Please forgive me if I do not remember your name tomorrow, because you have one name to remember and I have hundreds, if not thousands, to remember. So if I see you 2 or 3 times, please give me a little bit of patience to try to memorize everybody's name and a little bit about you, but I will do my utmost to do that. I'm thankful for the support I have of my family and friends and the members of the police department that showed up tonight as well. So it's truly an awesome experience, and I'm truly grateful. I will be in the office full-time next week, and I will start working on some plans that I have provided to town manager with her review to start moving forward in the direction to best support the town and the strategic plan of the town. And I look forward to meeting everybody in the room and that's watching, as well as council, all in due time. So much like Dr. Mitchell, who had a very well-prepared speech, who's already established his 100-day plan. I am at ground zero and I have not established that yet to this point, but I
To
will.
Mr. Mitchell's credit, he was hired a couple of weeks ago at least. You're hired today.
So give me the same latitude for a few weeks.
You did great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
They know I play golf every Friday, so yeah.
we weren't trying to encourage
Thank you so much.
you. All right, Mr. Taylor, I think you're up next.
Right. Good evening, council. As we started to do in the fall, we prepared some draft financial policy documents with staff's help, presented them to you, allowed some time for digestion. We've been back a few times with some tweaks here and there. I believe you have those for adoption tonight under your consent agenda. So what you'll see in here in this report that you have in front of you this evening, we did not provide it ahead of time. We wanted to take this time, just like on the financial policy guidelines, to walk you through it. We won't belabor each page, but to step you through it. We'll take questions along the way, keep it conversational, but I realize we're working within a 20-minute or so timeline tonight. So I want to make sure we step through each page, again, not belabor each point, but give you some food for thought and then come back. I know we'll be having a similar conversation with the folks planning commission meeting, and you all will be attending next week as well. So we'll have another opportunity to go back through this in more detail. And of course, if you have any questions or clarifications you want to provide to staff after the meeting this evening, we're happy to try to address those or implement any clarification points either prior to next week or prior to the next time we're before council. So with that said, I'm flipping through the book. The page numbers are at the bottom right-hand corner, so I'll be referencing those as we flip through. Starting on page 1, just topics for discussion. And I'd like to point out first that we are analyzing and reviewing both your general fund side as well as your utility side in this analysis. And both sections are set up to sort of mirror each other, if you will, go through your historical financials, both for the general fund and utility fund when we get to it. And the flow is set up to, again, mirror each other. So historical financials, debt and key ratios, as well as look at the affordability of some projects that you have identified thus far. And that's part of what we'll come back to after next week's planning commission meeting and sort of refine the analysis for your purposes. On page 2, a little bit of background. As you know, we work with many localities throughout Virginia and throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast region. These, what we call comprehensive financial reviews that we prepare almost annually now for many of our clients, are sort of the starting point as they get into their budget, throes of their budget process. So that's sort of part and parcel with your budgeting for the fiscal year 23. In September of last year, the town, you all have asked us or requested us to do one of these comprehensive financial reviews. Along the way, as part of our review of your debt portfolio, we identified several refunding opportunities, and I'm on page 2, bottom right-hand corner. We saved, as was presented in India's presentation earlier, we saved over $265,000. $261,000 of that was structured up front so that you get the benefit in the current fiscal year 22, and then next year in fiscal year 23. So you're not waiting until several years out or accumulating that over time. The way we structured that refunding, you were able to get about $130,000 in savings over the next 2 years, or counting this current fiscal year. And the last bullet on page 2, again, we've got some initial capital improvement programming needs that have been identified, but we understand there's more work to do, and we'll have to
further refine the analysis. But again, trying to put these in front of you to get the conversations going and understand what the difference is between debt capacity, debt affordability, and how those projects may be funded by either some balance of cash, grant monies, or even debt. Okay. On page 3, a little bit about our goals and objectives here. Again, we want to provide you perspective on how the town has been trending financially over the past several years, and provide some perspective with respect to your peer groups. We'll look in here about whether they're national towns and cities that are rated, as well as other Virginia rated cities and towns. On page 4, touching on debt capacity, that's effectively relative to your tax base, how much debt could you afford for these potential projects, and also debt affordability. So it's one thing to be able to fit it within your policies and fit it within your tax base, so that your ratios still look good from the credit market perspective. However, is it affordable, right? So there's a way we can show how you might afford some of these projects, whether it's on the general fund side or utility fund side. After talking through that, we'll begin to start developing a plan of finance, whether again it's a balance between cash, grants, and debt. And then again, lastly, we'll touch on the next steps, getting your input, refining the analysis, and being able to sort of finalize, if you will, the comprehensive review. So starting on page 6 is our general fund section, the general fund overview. On page 7, just a couple key highlights. And I want to interject here. Everything looks good financially from the town's overall perspective, both general fund and utility fund. Trends are doing nicely. Revenues are tracking above expenditures. So you've been able to build your cash and fund balance reserves. In particular, as we highlight on page 7 at the top, your general property tax revenues have grown on average. I want to reiterate, you can have different ups and downs over the course of a time period that's been measured, but overall, if you were to look at the average growth rate, your general property taxes have grown at 3.5% annually. Similarly, with operating expenditures, those have increased modestly at 3.3%. And you have remained above your fund balance policy that we've got for your consideration being adopted this evening. So above that 15% policy level on the general fund side. On page 8, this is a summary of your finances on the general fund side in particular. Again, this is just showing, I think what's key here is line 5, which is really tiny on this page. I realize that, but line 5 and line 12, thank you. Yes, line 5 and line 12, your revenues generally are above your expenditures. And you can see that graphically in the graph above the table. I think that's probably where we should focus because you can see it a little bit better on the graph. The blue line has been above the dark green at or above the dark green bars. So those dark green bars are your operating expenditures. The light green includes your debt service. Okay, so you're covering your operating expenditures historically, and over the past few years, you've put a little bit even more cushion between that blue line and the dark green bar. The orange line is showing you that your fund balance has grown from 2016 at roughly 2.8 million up to 3.3. So again, you're doing a good job of balancing revenues and expenditures and squirreling away those dollars for a rainy day. Page 9, again, in an effort to be respectful of your time this evening, page 9 is just more details that go to the summary page, so I'm going to skip over that. And let's focus a little bit more on page 10, which is zeroing in on your general fund balance. All right, so right here, the red line on the top right graphic, your red line is at 15% policy level that you're adopting under the consent agenda this evening. You can see the dark green line is well above that. And in fact, by 2021, you're at 43.3%. So you've got a good deal of cushion between your baseline policy, your minimum dollar amount that you want to have in your unassigned fund balance, your rainy day monies, versus what you actually have in there. So we're going to talk in just a minute about what are the potential uses of some of these funds. Do we just let them sit there, or do we program them? How much cushion should we keep? On the next page, page 11. So looking specifically at the 2021 ending unassigned fund balance, again, the unassigned, not factoring restricted funds that are earmarked for somewhere else, assigned or committed, all that is above and beyond what we're speaking to this evening on the roughly $3 million that you had unassigned fund balance. So based on the 21 audit, your fund balance, unassigned fund balance was almost $3 million, $2,991,000. Your operating revenues or expenditures rather for your budget level was 6.9. So that's roughly 43% fund balance versus your budget. Okay. So we asked ourselves, okay, well, what is our minimum policy based on the 15%? That's in column C. That'd be 1,037,000. So the difference is over under column D, and that's sort of what we want to hone in on this evening is the $1.92 million. One approach might be, okay, well, let's keep $1 million in the unassigned fund balance and truly keep it as cushion over and above our policy. The other $1 million, maybe we could use towards some of that capital programming that we're looking at. And we'll get to that in the affordability analysis in a little bit. But I want to point out too, one of the conversations we wanted to have this evening is that if we were going to allocate 50% of that cushion over and above our policy to the capital programming, we want to recognize that $570,000 or approximately that amount is related to the yacht club monies. Okay, and I think we've talked about this leading up to tonight to this report, that we wanted to provide some proposed thoughts about how we might program those yacht club monies, how we might better invest them, right? And so on the next page, page 12, the $570,000 of those funds that's designated or referred to as the yacht club funds, based on our interactions and discussions with staff and council, we understand to free those up and be able to be flexible with them. You would hold a public hearing and have a majority vote to say, we're going to utilize these funds that have been sitting here for a few decades and use them toward our projects. So right now they're still in your unassigned fund balance, the flexible pot of money, but they're sitting aside in the savings account. Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll talk about how we could potentially use those funds in addition to some of the unassigned fund balance to either buy down your future projects, meaning borrow less and just pay for them out of pocket, or maybe use those to shave some of the debt service and better leverage those monies to afford more projects over time. Page 13, I've got some more small graphs for you here. Just a lot to fit on one page, but I think big picture here, this is where the conversation comes about, all right, what do the dollar amounts look like, or how do we look at it better? And that would be as a percentage of our budget. So you can see, based or in comparison to some peer groups here, the town has a relatively small unassigned fund balance when compared to the peer group. However, when you look at it as a percentage relative to your budget, if you could scroll down just a little bit to capture the graphs on the bottom. Thank you. You are very much in line, if not better, than many of your peers, especially when you look at the far right-hand side on the bottom right, your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of revenues, okay? And this is slightly different than the other page because we're doing this. We pull a lot of data from Moody's, which is one of the nationally recognized rating agencies. So we subscribe to their database of information, and that's how we're able to pull many localities and peers for the purposes of these analyses. So all I'm saying is Moody's in particular measures your fund balance as well as others against revenues versus expenditures. Okay, so I just want to point that out. If somebody looks at that and says, well, that's below 40%, you're telling me it was 43%. That's why this is slightly different, but it's saying the same thing. Okay. On page 14, your debt service profile is relatively flat over the next several years. Your FY22 budget, before we did the refunding, you budgeted for roughly $660,000 for debt service on the general fund side. And you'll hear in a moment where one approach might be, we maintain that level of budget for debt service in the 23 budget going forward, so that when your debt does start stepping down, we won't lose those dollars to other uses such as operations. You keep them for purposes of capital program. You're already using identified recurring revenue sources to fund this debt service. And the concept would be, let's continue funding at least at a minimum for our capital programming, that's $660,000. Okay. That equates to roughly 13 pennies on your tax rate being used toward capital programming. And if you turn the page, this gives a good illustration. There's a graphic on the left-hand side, sort of shows you how that debt service is flat over the first, or over the next several years until fiscal year 35. Then you get a slight drop down in 36 and beyond. You'll notice in the light green, or excuse me, the orange bars, that's where we just wanted to give a nod, because it came up when we were doing the refunding. Okay, how much are we saving? When are we saving it? And how could it be allocated between the general fund and utility fund? So with staff's help, we understood what debt was for the general fund side and what was for the utility fund side. And what we've shown here is out of the $130,000 for each year during 22 and 23, $18,000 would be allocated to the general fund in 22, and $56,000 would be allocated in 23 for the general fund purposes. Okay. But on the far right-hand column where you see total prior debt service, that's where we're saying your old debt service before the refunding, which was programmed into your 22 budget, was at the $660,000 level. Okay. Turning to the next page. India, how are we doing on time? Because I think I'm, okay, all right. So this 10-year payout ratio, and again, this is just looking at your general fund debt. You are in line with the Virginia single A, if not slightly below. But one of the nuances to understand here is that, number one, versus the national peers, Virginia and North Carolina are unique in that the local governments are tasked with providing support to the schools. In many other states across our nation, there are separate school districts with their own taxing power. So that's one thing that's not really visible, I would say, on the medians that are pulled here. But to the point, you will hit the 50% sort of best practices benchmark over the next several years by fiscal year 27 or 28. The point is you had to do some debt for the schools a couple of years back, and we strategically layered that in given the size of the town's budget, and understanding that we needed to make it a little bit more affordable, and understood we'd be sort of below the 50% benchmark as we were doing it, but the plan was to bring it back above, and that's where you'll hit, is about 27 or 28. You'll be back up above 50%. On page 17, this is speaking to debt capacity. If you look at the dark green bars on the left, you're roughly at 1.6% right now as of fiscal year 22. And this is how much principal of debt do I have versus the tax base that I'm issuing that debt on, and expecting to sort of leverage that tax base to earn this money to pay back this debt. So you have 1.6% currently. The space in between the top of the dark green bars and the blue policy range, that's your debt capacity. How much debt can I issue on top of that, what I got currently, and still be within a best practices mode, okay? And you can see on the right-hand side that compared to your national peers and even the Virginia AAAs, you're in good stead there. The Virginia AA median and the Virginia single A median are higher. Okay. On page 18, this is your debt service as a percentage of your other operating expenditures. And you're
Scroll so that the slides are in it and not the top. Just a little bit more. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
okay. So you're roughly at 4%. 4% of your general fund operating budget is going toward debt service. And you can see our goal, our policy level is set at 12%. So again, the space in between the dark green bars and the red line is your debt capacity. How much debt service can we afford to take on within our budget and still from a best practices standpoint, be in good stead. Okay. And you can see in comparison to all your peers over on the right-hand side, you're well below the national and Virginia, strongest credit ratings out there, AAA, AA, and single A. Okay. On page 19, coming back to the concept of what do we do for the upcoming 23 budget with respect to our debt service. And this is where we want to show that maybe there's an argument to be made that maybe we should hold our line at the $660,000, and over time, as our debt service drops, maybe we can pick up dollars that can be reprogrammed for capital needs. So in the first column there, existing debt prior to 21 refunding, again, we were at $660,000. Over time, you're going to see it's relatively flat through 35, and then it starts dropping in 36 and beyond. The next column over, the cumulative decline, means we're picking up additional dollars annually thereafter. So let's just focus in on fiscal year 37 real quickly. By the time we get out to 2037, we're picking up $176,000 each year. That's annually recurring. That could be reprogrammed or used to fund pay-as-you-go projects at that level annually, or be used to leverage new debt. Okay. Again, we wanted to show you the savings that we got, how that was structured from the 2021 refunding, and then that's actually captured and showing the decline in the far right column. So next page, how do we use this information and analyze our CIP needs? So one thing we like to do that everybody can sort of relate to, if you will, is measure our affordability. We got capacity, we got space between our ratios right now and our policies that we're adopting. But how are we going to pay for it? Just because it's allowed under our ratios, how can we best afford it? So again, this is set up to mimic the prior page. On the left-hand side between columns B and E, we've got our existing debt, our potential proposed CIP debt. There's nothing in there right now. This is just showing your existing debt, and any PAYGO or CIP projects or related operating impact for your expenses. So if you build another school, you don't just build the bricks and mortar. You've got to keep the lights on, the heat and HVAC and everything working, right? So there's capital cost of building it. There's operating expenses for running it. So we've got a placeholder in column D for that. So by the time you get to column E, that sums up all your needs, and columns F through I are the revenues that we identify to offset. So in that first column, F, that $660,000 is held flat all the way out. Again, that is just in an effort to pick up any declines we have in your debt service to be able to reprogram. Then you do the math between columns I and E, my needs versus my revenues. You either have a surplus or a deficit. And so you can see in column J, that's where we're picking up those surpluses as our debt drops, and we're adding it over in column N into column O. So you can see that $1 million starting balance. going back to our prior discussion on the fund balance and setting aside maybe 50% of our $2 million cushion, that will be $1 million. We're starting the point, starting our capital reserve at $1 million. And again, that includes the $570,000 Yacht Club monies, okay? If you look at the bottom of the page, right now we're assuming that the value of a penny is $50,000. That may bounce around a little bit based on revaluation, but assuming equalization, you wouldn't expect that to jump around so much. So we've kept it at $50,000 based on your current budget levels. All right, next page.
Why do you assume a growth rate of 1% when it's 3.5% on average?
Trying to be conservative.
Okay.
That's the upshot. We can run whatever you like us to run.
No, that's fine. I
but-
just wanted to make sure.
I got you. And I think it's, I think it came in better than even expected. That's fair to say, right, India? Recently. This page, I won't belabor this page. I think in Colonial Beach, one of the things that has been identified as a potential need is formalizing the capital improvements process to be timed with your budget each year. And so one of the things that the credit markets are looking for, in particularly the rating agencies, is for that formalized process. Each year, you're identifying the next 5 or 10 years of what you think you will need, the expenditures for your projects, as well as the offsetting revenues, whether it's grants, cash from operations, or debt. And that's not necessarily set in stone, but it's more than a wish list. So what we would do is for fiscal year 22 through 27, you would have your projects laid out, and the next year comes, you have 23 to 28. Now it's going to change each year, but it's going to be an evolving, living, breathing document. That's a part of your annual budgeting process. And that's basically what's being mapped out here is the process, developing and formalizing that CIP process. Next page. Again, this is more steps in the process. I won't belabor this. It's basically giving a little bit of a flow chart of how that process comes together. Page 23, though, is a list of the current projects you all have identified. And this does not capture what you have just completed or just funded, whether it's pay-go or debt, over the past couple of years. We're actually going to work to pull some of that information together and provide to you and the Planning Commission, hopefully by next week. But this is looking forward. So it hasn't necessarily been funded yet, or if it's in the process of being funded, it might still be on here. But your projects for the general fund side, Public Works, Parks and Rec, Admin, Public Safety, you can see for each fiscal year, there's a total. For instance, fiscal year 22, it's $370,000. Out in 24, totals $3 million. All totaled on the right-hand side for general fund supported projects, we've identified $9.3 million. On the bottom of the chart, starting in line 21, you have your identified sources. So we know we've got some VDOT funding coming, or we hope to have some VDOT funding for the projects in 2027. We've got some ARPA funds that we're currently using, and we've got some other grants earmarked out in 2025 with the expectation that we would get those and be able to do the town, the pier project. Whatever's left over at the bottom that's unfunded, we've assumed it's town funded. And again, that could be through cash reserves. It could be through financings. For the purposes of having this conversation this evening and showing you how things get layered into the affordability analysis, we've just assumed that we're going to borrow $4 million. Okay? So if we flip the page.
This is just not including the water, sewer, utility projects.
Correct. That's going to be in the next section.
Okay, and the unallocated remainder ARPA fund.
Right.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
So for this, on page 24, We've laid out sort of our baseline assumptions. We're gonna borrow $4 million. We're gonna do so this August. It doesn't have to be this August. This is just for the assumptions and showing you how it layers into the affordability. That's basically the structure of our debt. It's gonna be financed over 20 years. And if we flip the page, that equates to roughly $310,000 annually for 20 years. And you can see that column that was blank, column C. Earlier, we had it filled in for, call it a half a period of interest in 23, and then full principal and interest, sort of mortgage style payments would pick up in 24 and beyond and mature and be paid off in 2043. So given that $1 million over on the far right-hand column, and given that we're plugging in some new debt service, what may happen is we can shave peaks of debt service out through 2026, okay? And then there might be a potential need for 2.5 pennies or over the next couple of years thereafter, but that just shows you how those funds could be leveraged to do more projects and not have to come out of pocket, so to speak, with a real estate tax rate in the near term. Now, we could adjust how we want to assume this. This is just for illustration purposes. We might find other dollars that we want to use toward paying down that $4 million and maybe only borrow $3 million. But this is just one example where you can shave some of that debt service and buy a little bit of time to figure out where some other revenue sources might come into play as opposed to raising taxes. Okay.
So without changing allocation of how much of our taxes go towards debt service as of today, and has been for the last, I don't know, decade probably, or since we built elementary school.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So you're
We're
currently,
affording a $4 million to fund the CIP.
so just to clarify and make sure I'm restating it the way you're thinking about this. Right now, you're dedicating about 13 pennies.
Right.
Okay. You would not need to raise taxes to afford the new CIP until fiscal year 27, maybe by 2.5 pennies, and then 2 pennies later. I mean, a year later, 2 more pennies.
This is also on a 1% growth rate.
You got it. So again, using this capital reserve fund that we sort of talked about earlier, that buys you some time to understand what your new revenue sources are going to be from new economic development projects, growth in the real estate tax base that might grow through that. So can we switch to the next page real quickly? I'm sorry, didn't know who was driving, I apologize. Alternatively, if we think that we've got a solidified program that everybody's in agreement on, and we want to move forward and just bite the bullet, that's one approach, right? That's not necessarily the recommendation. We're, again, doing illustrations this evening so we can start this conversation. If we decided, okay, we've got our CIP in place, we don't want to upfront it this current budget year, budget 23 is not the year to do it, but maybe budget 24 is where we want to raise a few pennies to cover this and give us more for our capital needs. That's what this page is showing, is doing it up front. Instead of doing 5 pennies out in 27 and 28, we do 3 pennies, a year or 2 from now. Okay. It produces enough revenue to carry you through that. Now, Mayor, to your point, we've got the new reval. That's going to potentially produce more revenues for us. How might we grow out of that 5 pennies later? That's sort of we could change the growth rate to assume 3%, for example. Maybe that 5 pennies out there becomes 3 pennies. So that hopefully that answers that question from earlier. Okay. So again, this is all about trying to go through this. Let's digest it and then come back and see, okay, what clarifications, what other points should we add to this concept? Okay. All right. And then this last page of this section, page 27, This is just readdressing our ratios after we've thrown in some debt. Okay, where do we stand from our policies? Where do we stand from best practices? And you can see that the light green, which is the proposed debt, if you will, layered in on top of our existing dark green debt. And you can see you're still well within your policy or well below your policy ranges. So that wraps up the general fund section. I'll stop right there if anybody has any questions before moving into the utility fund section. And I realize that I'm going well beyond 20 minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably.
I'll speed it up. It's
at the end of the meeting instead of the beginning, all these people are waiting.
I got you. All right, so utility fund, again, revenues are growing in excess of the operating expenditures. You can see that if you flip to the next page, page 30. Just look at the graph there. Blue line is staying well above the green line, and your cash is the gold line, and that's been increasing as well. You've been able to swirl away some more dollars on the utility fund side. So you look in good shape for ratios for enterprise funds, liquidity, debt service coverage. You're well above what you're planning to adopt this evening under the consent agenda. And then I'm just going to skip through the next few pages because they're the details behind the water and sewer funds. But the upshot here is even when we look at them individually, as we've set up our financial policy guidelines, we are in compliance from Jump Street, and we'll continue to be in compliance even with the CIP superimposed in, if you will. The one page I do want to hit on real quickly is page 35. Again, this is set up to be similar to the general fund page. I just want to highlight that out of the 130,000 or 138,000 we're saving in 22, 120 is allocated to the general fund, and then the other in 23 there's 67,000 allocated to the utility fund. On your next page, that's the CIP for the utility fund for water and sewer. And then we've got it layered into the pro forma projecting forward to make sure we're going to hit our liquidity ratios and our debt service coverage ratios. So with that, I'll just wrap it up there and get out the way. Unless somebody has any questions.
I don't know, you went through so fast on that second part, and that's the part that I was a little more interested in, honestly.
Oh, okay.
I mean, where am I finding the same chart for funding the CIP items for water sewer?
That's the page, page 36.
I passed it, that's why. No, that's not what I'm talking about.
That's 36, isn't it?
No, I'm talking about the equivalent of page 25, but in water and sewer.
Oh, the affordability. Okay, so if we look at page 37, we're taking your water fund here, starting with the budget 22 financials, and doing a projection based on historical growth trends, and layering in water projects. For your water fund, you've got the $70,000 project layered into 22, which is the First Street water main replacement, and that's being cash funded. The rest of the projects are on the sewer side, and that's page 38. And most of this, if not all of it, is being offset by ARPA funds and grant loan funds. So the $2,475,000 there, most of that, the 2.1 million of it is the central drainage area sewer replacement. That's being covered by ARPA funds. And what we've done here is just shown them being spent down through lines in line 26 with the offsetting grants in line 25, but you can see based on your historical growth trends and layering those in and those sources offsetting those projects, your liquidity ratio stays above the 50% and your days cash on hand stays above the 180 days. Debt service coverage also stays compliant on line 18.
Yes, Mr. Montier.
I don't know if this is particularly relevant to your analysis, but I would appreciate your thoughts on to what extent we should be concerned about inflation and how do we address it?
That's the question, right? I mean, if you go out today to bid, is the project going to be $2,475,000 or $2.1 million? Maybe it's already gone up. I don't know when these estimates were provided to you all. The further you get out, the more risk of an inflation there is. So what may cost $2.5 million today might cost $3.5 million tomorrow. So there's an argument to be made that let's bite the bullet and do it sooner, right? Because we don't want to run the risk of inflation. Or maybe do we wait till more monies are identified to offset this project? I don't know. That's the answer. It's the risk of inflation over time.
I can accept you don't know.
The other thing we've also run into with a few of our other clients, they recognize that many contractors are getting pulled in many different directions and have limited capacity to do projects, right? So that could be the other premium that you're not just inflation risk, but also the premium you're dealing with obtaining folks that can do the projects for you, right? So there's another factor to weigh into the equation of do you wait or do you do it now? Yes, sir.
Yes, Dr. Sullivan.
On page 36, line 13, I know we have the 2.475 million in ARPA funds that came in this year. And I understand there are more funds to come, but that 5.7 in 2024, I don't remember that number. Where is that coming from?
Are you asking me or you're?
I'm asking whoever has the answer.
It's from our legislative request. Is that right?
So the 5.7 number that you're looking at as it relates to the point drainage area replacement was based on the numbers provided by Duke as it relates to the kind of top 5 areas. So I think that is including our top 5 areas so that the uses as it relates to the actual naming of that could probably be clarified. That's those 5 projects, top 5 projects.
Because it looks like it's a source, and the source are the ARPA funds. But are we getting $5.7 million in ARPA funds in 2024?
No, I think that's maybe an error on the shading. But there are some funds that we will be able to get from ARPA that could be related to that. But no, our total ARPA funds is not.
Yeah, I understand what Karen's saying, but I also have several follow-up questions and we have a whole rest of a meeting to get to. So I think this is just a lot to digest and I want to take time on that as well. Follow up.
Yes.
Okay.
We will be back next Thursday. So if you have any questions, that would probably be the most appropriate time.
Thank you for your time this evening. Sorry for running long.
RT, we're gonna put you at the end next time. All right, next up is citizen input. First up, I have Mr. Green. Yes, welcome. I do keep you to 3 minutes, as you know, Mr. Green already.
Yes, ma'am.
And I appreciate your time and input.
And good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and Madam Town Manager. This budget thing, as we were going through it, and one of the reasons that I wanted to come in is that is almost a Rubik's Cube for any person that is in this town as far as looking through that paperwork, page 36, page 10, page 12. Can it be boiled down to something like Cliff Notes? You know what I mean? Can we get it down to, like something like, this is how much money we have. This is what we need to do type of column over here. This is what we'd like to do over here. go down to the bottom of the column and go, hey, this is what it's gonna cost us to get what we need. This is what it's gonna cost us as far as to get to what we want to have as opposed to what we need. Can we get something like that? Because if you could do that in 10 pages, the people would actually read it and actually give you some input, support back, but you can't understand this. Okay, that's just way above me. Let's see, parking meeting went great. Town manager, thank you so much. That parking meeting went great. Every question that was asked in here almost pretty much got answered. I agree with Mr. Williams. Robin Grove's looking good down there. He couldn't beat what's going on there. I got somebody that hit me up on the internet the other day. They're from the Mid-Atlantic Riders Club out of Greenwood, Delaware, and the parking question was one of the things that they were talking about. And they're wondering when we're going to figure out what we're going to do as far as parking and what it's going to cost, because clubs make up their trip type of things around June, July timeframe for their fall runs. Let's see, school board meetings. I've already talked to Dr. Miller. I don't think that the mask thing should go any farther than tomorrow since the governor already signed that bill. Broadcasted school board meetings, and I'd like to see if we could get a police summary report. Thank you very much.
Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One of them you and Dr. Sullivan have already mentioned. I was going to put my foundation hat on and talk about the meetup tomorrow, which Dr. Sullivan did, and then I was going to talk about how cool the space was, which you've already done, Madam Mayor. But I did want to underscore that if you haven't been in there, it's really, really cool what they're going to be doing with their soda fountain vibe. So come tomorrow, 6 o'clock, meet a bunch of the folks in town, and we'll have some fun. The next thing I wanted to mention is if you haven't driven by the corner of Douglas and Wilder and looked at the board that has the site plan for the Dotson development, since this past weekend, you wouldn't have seen that all of the units that have been put on the market are now under contract. So there was 13 units that have been put out there for sale, and as of this past weekend, they're all under contract. So things are going really, really well with that. And then finally, seeing Officer Thompson here, I don't know if he's still here, but I just wanted to commend him and thank him. About a year ago, little less than a year ago, I had some major theft at one of my properties in town. And I thought it was kind of a cold case until this past weekend when Officer Thompson helped me recover some of my items. So I just wanted to thank him and commend him for the good job. And he's such a pleasant guy, and I'm so thrilled that we have him as an officer in town. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Duke?
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for letting me take off my department head hat for 1 second. Speak briefly as a citizen. I hope I can get through this. I have to be honest. As many of you know, the town recently lost one of its finest citizens. Personally, I lost a dear lifelong friend and the godfather of my 3 boys. On February 2nd, Mr. Walter Kern passed away. I had the opportunity to visit with Walter the day before he died, and I promised him that I would let you folks know anything that was on his mind. Sadly, he did not get a chance to deliver another one of his history lessons. So with your permission, I'd like to pass along one last history lesson on his behalf. Walter Kern was born January 19th, 1946, right outside of town, and graduated from Colonial Beach High School in 1966. Many folks have told some pretty cool stories about Walter through the years, about his younger days. One of the ones I recall was Coach Swope recently wrote about how Walter would often just abruptly leave his class in the middle of class in high school when the fire alarm went off because he wanted to go help out his beloved Colonial Beach Volunteer Fire Department. Some of the stories I can't tell in Nick's company, but he used to do his best Olympic tryout moves with a swan dive off the town's high dive. After high school, Walter spent time in the United States Navy. A proud veteran, Walter and his shipmates would often borrow a rental car for the weekend in San Diego, driving to Mexico, only to return it safely to its owners, who didn't actually know it was gone. One of his more proudest achievements he used to talk about was the fact that when he got out of the Navy, he actually hitchhiked from Colonial Beach, or excuse me, from San Diego to back home here in Colonial Beach in about 3 days. So he was always pretty proud of that. Walter worked around town for many of his more famous businessmen, including Bobby Pearson and Mr. Cooper. Matter of fact, Walter used to work in this building long before town decisions were made here. One of my fondest memories was in the mid-'80s when Walter was employed by the contractor who was rebuilding the Harry Nice Bridge. And we used to kiddingly tell him that we'd happily cross into Maryland via boat as opposed to driving on any bridge that he was in charge of fixing. And he was always one of the first people to give me a hard time when the Redskins or Commanders now would beat my Cowboys. All joking aside, Walter loved this town. He was truly Mr. Colonial Beach, whether it was volunteering with the fire department, where he was a lifetime member, or raising money for the Colonial Beach Youth Athletic Association. His contributions to our town were innumerable. In recent years, he could be found here, giving you folks some local history, or riding around in his golf cart, and in true Walter fashion, helping any and everyone who needed it. He was a loud cheerleader for our town's success, and even louder at Drifter sporting events. He touched the lives of so many that these stories in 3 minutes of time simply do not do justice to how great of a person he was. Quick story, in 2002, Walter actually ran for town council. At the same time, a young, immature kid ran for town treasurer, me. Walter lost that election by only a handful of votes, although he found great joy in getting more votes than one of the incumbents that year. What made Walter truly special was that he was actually happier for me that I won than disappointed that he did not. And that was Walter, giving, kind, and the most unselfish person you'd ever meet. Walter always believed that our town was right on the cusp of being truly special. He lived long enough to see the direction we were heading in, and would undoubtedly be pleased with the town's continued success. He loved this town, he loved our school, he loved our people. While I will personally value his friendship to me and my family, I hope the citizens of Colonial Beach remember his love and dedication to the town. Walter believed that his history lessons were just a small part of the larger success story that has yet to be written. Now, as we move forward with a bright future, history lessons told in the years to come should include the contributions of Mr. Walter Kern. Thank you.
Bobby, he was very proud of us.
Yes, he was.
Okay, that concludes citizen input, unless I have anybody else from the audience. Seeing none, we will move forward to our public hearing and back to business, as Walter would have wanted us to do. Ordinance 721, business licenses, Article 1. Lisa, you want to read us into this and we'll open the public hearing? Oh, I'm sorry. Adam, it's because Adam's name is on the next line, or Adam's name is up here and then Lisa King's.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Yes, Mr. Chamber, please.
Yes, so on February 2nd at the work session, I proposed to council adopting ordinance 721, changing the business license ordinance. And this is, I'm just presenting council to give me direction on which way to go with it.
All right, I don't have anybody signed up for the public hearing. We discussed this and reviewed it at the last work session. So I will open the public hearing at 7:40 p.m. If anybody would like to speak, you're welcome to come forward. Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:41 p.m. Is there a council action? I have a motion and second, and then if there's any further discussion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve approve ordinance number 721, which amends chapter 13.1 licenses, article 1 business and occupational licenses.
Is there a second? Second. All right, is there any further discussion? Okay, in case there were different people in the audience tonight than there was at the last work session, I just want to recap really quickly what's happening right now. We're updating our business license procedure with the intention to streamline both the application, reduce the number of very categorized and varied tax rates to a level. We are creating a $30 minimum. So that simplifies our very tiny businesses in town. Trying to make that application process both easier for them and more efficient for the town staff. We are also requiring that rentals, anybody who has an Airbnb or VRBO or any kind of cottage rental, that will be required to have a business license. Okay.
Madam Mayor, that's
And-
short-term rentals, right?
Short term, yes.
And that's
Cottage.
classified as less than 30 days in town?
Yes, people who rent their house for less than 30 days have to have a business license and have to pay cottage tax. That was already a law, just reminding people. And the new due date is now extended to May 1st, so we're giving you a little more time. Okay. All right, with that, I'll take a vote. There's no further discussion. All right. Dr. Sullivan,
Aye.
Ms. Clement,
Aye.
Mr. Moncur,
Aye.
Mr. Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Ms. Robertson,
Aye.
and Mayor votes aye. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I was keeping you guys on your toes, so you weren't running out of order. Yeah, that's good. Keep it going. All right, authorization of our contract with our chief of police. I feel like we probably should have done this before we swore you in, but I just will. Move it along.
Well, this means he gets paid.
Yeah. Do I have a motion to authorize a contract with our new chief of police, Chief Beaver?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Moncur, seconded by Ms. Robertson. Any discussion? A little late, just kidding. He's already here.
Just want to say welcome aboard.
Yeah. Wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You have a unanimous appointment, Chief Deere. And now a valid contract. All right, Mr. Duke, you're back up. Amendment of the Town of Colonial Beach Special Events Policy.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. I was here a couple weeks ago and I spoke to you about this topic. We've pared our slide presentation down to 3 to just make it quick for everybody. But this is just some changes to our special events policy. As you can see, the proposed changes we're asking for tonight are adding language for adding language for and adoption of a tent rental fee, which is in the fee schedule that you have in front of you. That council approve all large A class events, and those are classified as 3,500 or more attendees. Number 3 is adding language for an adoption of parking package for event holders, which is 17 dedicated spots at a rate of $20 per space per day. And those were all located on Washington and Colonial. And then the 4th is adding a CBVA marketing package of $250 or $500, depending on the event. So if anybody, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I tried to answer some last time, but if anybody wants to ask, I'd be glad to help.
Could you just explain the marketing package or what that entails, just so the audience can know?
I'd be more comfortable if Ms. Adams-Jacobs gave that one. She knows a little bit more about it than I do.
Yes, so speaking with Ms. Susan French, our marketing consultant. We as a town have a DMO through our CBVA site. So we've been actually talking to some special event applicants who would like some joint marketing and collaborative efforts. So if they want to either have that optional package, they will be able to work with Susan on promotion on our CBVA tourism site, which we see as a natural way to improve that site, improve analytics, get more traction, and also as a way to monetize and help support that site as well, and also help our special event applicants get the word out about their events so that they could be more successful.
And that just applies to Class A on the chart? Or is that
Yes,
across the board, any event could?
it's optional, so it could be an add-on for any of the events.
I only mention that because a lot of times we hear that people don't know what events are coming. So that marketing piece of it could help, make it more visible for people that want to come to the town. Even people in Fredericksburg don't necessarily know when the car shows are, that kind of stuff. This would just help them. That's all.
One of the points of emphasis back several months ago when we started this process was the fact that we don't have a lot of private events, for example. And we had talked about the ability to market the town and our special events as a place for private events such as weddings and class reunions and things like that. So the more marketing we can do through other people paying for it, to be quite honest with you, and our own efforts, is only going to behoove us in the long run as we attract not only civic organizations holding special events, but also private individuals.
Do I have a motion for amendment to the special events policy? We'll still have discussion. We can still discuss.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
second? Okay. Now it's open for any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Williams?
Just a question. Under the special events application, it says that the application will be submitted to the Director of Parks and Recreation Events. I know, Mr. Dukes, you're filling in. You said you wear several hats.
Yes, sir.
Parks and Rec Director. Is this something that's, the special events is actually officially moved under Parks and Rec, or are you just filling in until how's that work?
Yeah, special events will be under Parks and Rec, and as part of the new budget process and a revamp of that office, it will be formally known as Parks, Recreation, and Events. So that's the most appropriate place for it to be now and in the future.
I want to encourage people to rent the tent. And I know Public Works doesn't probably, but look up. He rolled his eyes over there. It's okay. They need practice putting it up. It's gorgeous. It is a gorgeous, beautiful tent, and it's got our logo on it, and it's fantastic. So anyway, I know Rob's not excited, but I am excited. All right, is there any more discussion on this? Okay.
Just one question about tent rental.
Yes.
Is that a daily fee or is that what's the?
For the event, I don't know. Is that a put up, take down?
It's a one-time fee, including setup and takedown, and then the county fee to have it appropriately placed.
They have to expect it.
Yeah, they have to expect it, yeah.
That's a good question. I'm sure more questions will arise as we have more events too, but that you will be having.
We got a lot already scheduled, so it's be a fun summer,
Good.
Yep.
It's exciting.
especially a kite day. That's coming, but I'm doing that one.
What's that?
The kite, we're gonna have a
Oh, we're
kite
doing
flying
a
day.
kite day?
Thanks to your
Kite
recommendation on
flying.
that. Yes, absolutely.
I have 2 kites. Somebody can borrow one. Oh, Lisa's got some kites. Excellent. Okay. You want me to do a roll call vote on this? Or are we all in favor? Doesn't matter. I'm gonna roll call it just to make sure. Ms. Clement?
Aye.
Mr. Moncur?
Aye.
Ms. Robertson?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
And Ms. Dr. Sullivan?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
I just wanted to make a note of all the efforts that everybody in town is making. Our season is now seems to be starting in April instead of May. I think we are booked solid for the weekends in April for events already. Yeah, so that's great.
That is great. Been a long time coming. Feel like we've been talking about that for 30 years. I know, you better get busy. Get your kite together.
Not me.
Okay. Next up, this is.
Somebody has to boost me to get that kite going.
You mean you can't get it off the ground?
I need to be on somebody's shoulders.
Nobody's seen her stand up yet, though. Discussion of tenancy of 106 Hawthorne Street. Ms. Giles, Ms. A. Giles, would you like to read us into this one? Okay.
Sorry, we've discussed a lot of options regarding the status, but I think, so I've worked with and spoken with the town manager on this issue. And at this point, the lease has yes, it has terminated and it has gone to a month-to-month tenancy. But this property this property is needed as part of the it's part of the Dotson transactions. So in the very near future, obviously, the town needs possession of the property and the lease has terminated. We have drafted a notice to that effect, but we're bringing this to the attention of town council to for direction, guidance, authorization to proceed and move forward in that regard, in that way.
Is this the chamber building?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you would like authorization to terminate the lease formally?
Terminate the
30
month-to-month
days.
tenancy because the lease itself is terminated.
Okay.
But I just want to, I've looked to the town manager to make sure that, because I'm not more familiar with the properties, I wanted to make sure I was thinking of the right property because we've got a couple of different things going on a couple of different properties. So my apologies to you. But this particular lease, yes, it has itself terminated and now there's a month-to-month tenancy.
I don't think this is any surprise to anybody.
It is my information that the conversations have been had with the tenant and, that folks are aware that this property, the possession of the property is needed.
So we're looking to give them their 30-day notice now?
Correct. But with council's permission, yes, to terminate the tenancy and provide the notice. And yes, it would be a 30-day notice to quit the property. That's technically what it's called, a notice to quit.
So are we talking about from today or from some future date?
Today preferably, but I mean, it could be tomorrow. That's not going to make a huge difference, but as quickly as possible, only because that we are working with Dodson, of course, to effect the closings as quickly as possible, or as expeditiously as is possible and practicable, because there are lots of contingencies and conditions.
Yeah, I think we put this off as long as we can. Is that right? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the termination of the month-to-month tenancy for 106 Hawthorne Street?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
When are we supposed to go to closing on this?
Any day?
Yes, we're working with the purchasers and we're in constant communication, probably your town manager more so than I, but because of course I'm communicating with the attorney, receiving an email as I pulled in this evening on those documents. So we are in constant communication. And to a point that I that I quickly made just a minute ago, there are lots of conditions to be met on both sides. So any delays really have related to that. Just the ability on both sides of the equation to meet the conditions, just normal closing documents and procedures that have to take place, appraisals and all of those types of things, to a point that was discussed earlier, getting people out to do things and that sort of thing. So we've all been working to make these things happen. It's just, it's an ever-changing environment and financings and all of those types of things. So we're constantly communicating on all of the conditions and the requirements, and doing the best we can. So hopefully soon, but I also don't want to set expectations. It should be very soon, and that is definitely the hope. I think a realistic expectation, but
Do we need to do this for the school board building as well? Like technically, or is that lease already?
that lease doesn't expire on its terms for about 6 months from now ish. I don't remember the exact date, but September, I'm told. So that, however, I think there are conversations about the move. So that could be a voluntary termination, an agreement to terminate the lease, and I think that's the expectation on that one. But
Yes, I've been in discussion with Superintendent Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell. Obviously, the school board is looking to relocate anyway into their new building, so it will be more just really a ratifying of the documents on the back end.
an agreement to terminate is what it would be. So because the document itself, unlike the chamber building, has not itself terminated under its own terms.
Oh, I understand. So because the chamber lease is on a month-to-month tenancy, because the prior contract is already terminated, it's a different.
Correct. You can just provide a notice to quit. Whereas because the school board property lease has not itself expired under its own terms, then you would have to enter into an agreement with both parties to terminate that lease early. But I think it's my understanding that they're moving anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem.
And they're already been coordinating with Dotson, I think, as well. There's been flexibility there.
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a preliminary discussion with the contractor as well as the board. I also met with town manager and Mr. Miller here. The plan is to try to get us out of here by the 28th. I think we're on course to do that. I did a walkthrough yesterday. The flooring has been put in. We have a couple of things to do with the occupancy permit, particularly around making sure the doors are on the bathrooms. It's on back order, but I believe we'll meet the timeline to be out by the 28th. Okay.
And if I may follow up on that, our firm represents the school board as well. So I have spoken with the school board attorney for Colonial Beach Public Schools, and so or Colonial Beach School System. So that agreement, as soon as we know a date, we didn't want to put something in that would be unfair until they know that they have a place to go.
Sure.
So as soon as we have that, we have had that discussion. So assuming that there is no controversy in making this happen and documenting it properly, I have worked with the school's attorney quite easily. He's right down the hall to make that happen.
Is there any further discussion? Okay. I'm looking. Huh?
Roll call.
Okay,
Roll call.
yes. You want to start it?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And aye. Moving forward. Okay. Karen, Dr. Sullivan, do you have the language for us?
I do.
I want you to
Let
read
me
it and then
ask
we're
the
gonna.
question first. Is there any reason we need to separate these, or can we do it all in one motion?
Is there any reason to separate?
Okay, so I move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel employed regarding specific matters requiring legal advice from counsel for development and real estate agreement contract analysis. And pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel pertaining to pending litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the litigating posture of the public body in the pending court cases in Westmoreland County Circuit Court. And pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3, discussion of the acquisition of real property for public use or of the disposition of publicly held real estate property for discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body regarding available properties for anticipated future space needs.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess and then we'll go into session. What are the ladies doing? Motion to reconvene an open meeting. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to certify that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by council?
So moved.
Second? All right, this is an individual certification.
I so certify.
I so certify.
I so certified.
So certified.
I so certified. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Do I
adjourn.
have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, meeting adjourned.
Okay.